I had a friend of mine tell me once that novels are never finished. They're merely abandoned at critical times. The point was that writers are likely to continue to write and edit, rewrite, edit more, erase, start over, and never stop. Writers do that, I think, because they inherently know that stories never truly end. We are all living out a story, and we are comprised of stories. Stories our mothers told us, stories we heard, stories we saw, stories we were a part of. Stories inhabit our whole being. And as I said, we are living a story. The choices we make, the consequences of the choices we didn't make, the things that happened to us, and the things that never came about. And all of the feelings and reactions to all those things are there too. We are, each of us, a deep and rich story. And when we gather into communities, the stories begin to fuse, to braid together and hold us. They let us know who we are as a community and where we have come from. They tell us our names and our values, our collective desires and our collective griefs. Stories honor the dead and the living, and it is in those communal stories that those who have gone before us are present and with us again. During this convention, we are given the opportunity to step back into the story of Northern Michigan. We are given a chance to remember. We may hear things we didn't know, or things that we find hard to hear. We may hear things that help us remember who we are and who we want to be. We may hear our stories told through song and words, through liturgy and video. And we may hear our stories through figures and line items on the budget, because even that is part of our story. Each of our stories are woven into this community, into a larger story that holds all that we hope and pray and are. And in that very story is also the laughter of the Spirit and the joy of the God who loves us. For we are told that when 2 or 3 stories are gathered, God is there. As God is here, God too has a story to tell. It too is the story of us. God tells us the stories of our strengths and of our tender hearts, of how we love and how we heal, and how we move mountains and how we care for them. God's story tells us also of how God was there when our hearts were broken, and how God walked with us as we mended. This story is vital and is needed. This story is ours to claim as well, because without telling God's story of our lives in conjunction with our own version of the story is incomplete. To tell the full story of the UP is to include you and me and the God who loves us all. During this convention, we are not only given the opportunity to step back into the story of the UP to remember it, we are also gathered to further it, to write the next piece. So how are we writing the story of our community today? What words will we choose, and what will be brought to light? How will it be told to the generations to come as they gather to remember and add their piece of the story? And what is God whispering in your hearts to be woven into these narratives? Now is not the time to give up your story and let others write it. We are all living out a story. We are all a part of this story, the story of the UP. However we tell these stories today, I pray that we own them, and I pray that our words will be true.